Salutations, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland. Forgive my hoarse voice, I've had a bit of laryngitis. Anyway, this video is about Richmond Palace, remains of which are behind me. So there has been a house on this site since at least the 12th century. So this area was known as Sheen, and there's still bits of not too far from here, places called East Sheen and so forth, North Sheen, stations with those names. But now this exact area where I am is known as Richmond, but it's only had that name since 1501. Anyway, this is part of a royal manor, as in a piece of land directly ruled by the monarch, not farmed out to any feudal lord. So there was an abbey here back in the early Middle Ages that Henry I took over the manor house, spent some time here, and so many subsequent monarchs were here as well. Henry II, they set up a deer park, which still stands, Richmond Park, which is up the hill. You can't see it from here, about 2 miles that way. And they used to go hunting. So we're quite close to the River Thames. The River Thames is only about 100 meters that away. Anyway, so Richard II in particular spent a lot of time here, and his wife Anna Bohemia died in Richmond Palace. He was so grieved by her early decease, and they had no children, that he ordered the palace to be pulled down, and it was since rebuilt. So nothing you see here is from before 1400. The subsequent monarchs, they all spent time here. Henry VII in particular. So he was born in 1457. His father had already died. It was a Tudor, obviously. It was a quarter Welsh, and he inherited the title Earl of Richmond, relating to Richmond in North Yorkshire. So after the Battle of Bosworth, Henry VII married Elizabeth of York, as in Richard III's sister, and also Edward IV's sister, and that's how the Tudor dynasty was formed. And the two roses came together at the end of the Wars of the Roses, the red and the white united by that marriage of Henry VII to Elizabeth of York. So he was enchanted by this area of Middlesex, as it then was, and of Surrey, as it then was, because we are south of the river. It might appear that we're north because of the meanders, but we're actually on the south bank. And he named this area Richmond after his estate in Yorkshire, and he also had the title Earl of Richmond before he became king. So much of what you see as Tudor, there's the gatehouse, the wardrobe, a little bit, the trumpeter's house, little bits of it left, and there are various toponyms around here which are redolent of when this was a palace occupying over 20 acres, maids of honour row, and so forth. Anyway, so Henry VIII has spent a great deal of time here. We turn around and look at Richmond Green. This was a jousting yard for when the knights would practice riding in other lances to practice for war, and jousting was still a thing in the early 16th century. So Henry VIII is very fond of the tilt yard, but it really was a blood sport. It was dangerous. You could be seriously injured. Occasionally people were killed. I mean, think of all that weight of the horse and the suit of armour going pell-mell for you. At full pelt, it's going to hit you at like 40 miles an hour quite easily. Anyway, so after Henry VIII, he grabbed more land around here, suppressing the local abbeys at the dissolution of the monasteries in the 1530s. His daughter, Elizabeth I, she was very fond of this palace, and she spent Christmas here most years. And indeed, she died here in March 1603. Her cousin, Robert Carey, heard the news of her death, and he rode hard from this palace for 4 days to the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh to inform James VI, King of Scots, who was now King of England. Charles I had largely neglected the palace, as indeed had James I. Then came the English Civil War, and by 1649, the Commonwealth government, as in Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell's government, they had control of this. Well, they'd actually controlled this area, Surrey, from very early in the Civil War, and they did a full inventory of it. They decided to sell it off. There was no monarch anymore. There was no need for any such huge palace, and that was that. And it's really been out of royal hands ever since. Charles II didn't demand it back. So largely it was pulled down as being impractical. As you can see, just small sections of it have survived. You can walk through there into a little courtyard, but beyond this gateway, almost nothing of it dates from the 15th century or the 16th century. These are all mostly 18th century and 19th century rebuildings, and some of the stone was stolen. So it was right overlooking the River Thames, which is a means of transport and a means of defence. You're defended on at least one side, and indeed a source of fresh fish. Remember, you had to eat fish on Fridays. Well, certainly not eat meat according to Catholicism, and indeed after the Reformation, Protestants largely observed that rule. So that is the remains of Richmond Palace.